Hello. In this video, I'm playing RimWorld's latest DLC, Odyssey. If you've been living under a rock, Odyssey is a brand new expansion that opens up RimWorld to spacefaring adventures and more. But instead of climbing the tech tree and building my own ship, I'm doing something a little different. I've concocted a custom scenario: 4 tribals awaken from crypto sleep inside the cargo hold of a massive ancient grav ship that has crashed into a nearby asteroid. They have no idea how anything works. The original crew is long gone. The ship is crippled. The engines are destroyed. The pilot console shattered. And their only supplies are 40 packaged survival meals, some steel and components. Over the course of this playthrough, I followed their struggle to adapt to this jarring new life. From food shortages and power failures, to slowly uncovering the secrets of the ship, and even beginning to slowly worship the very technology they once feared. This is the beginning of a long journey. One where these tribals will either die in the dark or evolve into something far stranger. Let's see how far they get. Meet the 4 unlucky survivors of this strange and unforgiving situation. Drex Tinkerscribe, the crafter and artist. Oren Logic Weaver, the genius doctor. Luma Sparkborn, the planter. Tharn Ironshade, the builder and miner. They have now become a part of the Children of the Machine, an ideology blending loyalty, collectivism, transhumanism, and being shipborn. Shipborn is a new meme from the Odyssey DLC. Pawns with this belief feel more at home in space. The 4 tribals awaken from crypto sleep to find themselves surrounded by strange foreign machines, metallic and alien in form. The familiar sounds of nature gone, replaced by the cold mechanical chorus of this derelict grav ship. Tharn investigated a strange-looking suit of armor left behind. Perhaps it was meant to protect him against the horrors lurking outside. Being the colony's best miner, he decided to don the vac suit as he stumbled awkwardly trying to equip it. Oren, the tribe's researcher, began to realize that the only way to understand where and what they were trapped on was through careful study and research. 3 simple research benches were hastily constructed. With only 46 packaged survival meals in storage, Oren and the others would need to learn how to grow food indoors and fast. The rush to unlock electricity had begun. During this time, Tharn peered through the door leading outside and began to explore his surroundings. He then wandered into something familiar, a node of steel protruding out of the asteroid's surface. Tharn mined out valuable steel and began sealing off the cave entrances to make it accessible to the rest of the tribe, who lacked any form of vacuum protection. He also built a steel-walled tunnel connecting the cave to the grav ship. After carefully deconstructing part of the grav ship's hull, he linked the 2 areas together. The pressurization of the cavern was slow but steady. But the next challenge was temperature. Inside the cavern, it was holding at a steady -50 degrees Celsius, or -58 freedom units. So to help the ship's heaters cope, more walls were built, effectively cutting the cave system in half to conserve warmth. It worked. The temperature inside the living area was now much more manageable. With the cold temporarily under control, Tharn began excavating a large chamber in preparation for the researchers' next breakthrough. Then things got worse. Orbital debris began bombarding the asteroid, crashing down in random locations with terrifying force. Back inside, the research team was laser-focused, working hard to finish their understanding of electricity. Once complete, the team immediately expedited research into hydroponics, because with only 5 packaged survival meals left, time was running out. Tharn, now armed with a basic understanding of electrical systems, began laying power cables through the cavern, preparing to construct the ship's most precious artifact, a sun lamp. an artificial sun powerful enough to grow crops in total darkness. But there was a problem. The lamp's energy draw was enormous, far too much for the colony's tiny grid of generators to handle. Backup batteries were draining fast, so the lamp had to be switched off. To fix this, the tribe raided the ship's chem fuel tanks, salvaging enough petrochemicals to keep the generators running. They also built an extra generator, and even deconstructed the ship's automatic doors just to reduce power consumption. With just enough power scraped together, the sun lamp finally came online. 8 hydroponics basins were constructed around it, each pulling 70 watts. It wasn't perfect, but it should be just enough to feed all 4 of the tribe's people. During this period of food insecurity, Luma was discovered hoarding 9 packaged survival meals. She claimed it was for the tribe. Then came another issue: steel. The asteroid, it turned out, did not have much of it exposed on the surface. So Tharn was assigned a new task: strip mining the rock in long, straight tunnels, searching for the lifeblood of any RimWorld colony. While he worked, a message arrived. The first quest the tribe could even consider accepting. A woman named I'm a Believer from the Eneron faction reached out with a request. Her friend, Grendel Karthith, wanted to observe tribal life aboard a grav ship. In return, the tribe would receive 2 Glitterworld medicine and 17 gold. The offer was accepted. Grendel's drop pod landed outside in the vacuum of space. Luckily, the pod landed close to the ship's outer airlock. Grendel emerged and immediately sprinted towards safety, managing to dive inside just in time. A few seconds longer, and the only thing left would have been a frozen corpse and a very awkward letter back to Eneron. And finally, a breakthrough, the first harvest of rice. Not too much, and not cooked, but enough to keep the worst of starvation at bay. With survival no longer hanging by a thread, the tribe set their sights on the next critical advancement: microelectronics. They need a communications console to conduct trade with nearby orbital vessels. A second harvest of rice came in, and with it, real breathing room. Meanwhile, Tharn's exploratory mining effort was expanded. Still no sign of steel. During one of Tharn's mining shifts, Grendel's shuttle finally arrived to retrieve him. Unfortunately, it landed far from the main airlock. Grendel made the dash across the airless void, barely reaching the shuttle. With him safely on board, the promised quest rewards, 2 Glitterworld meds, and 17 gold landed nearby. To cut down on travel time for Tharn, a tunnel was excavated directly through the center of the asteroid. During this effort, he struck a vein of compacted steel. It was fully mined out, yielding around 700 units of steel. Shortly after microelectronics research was completed, the next research goal became clear: biofuel refinement. The colony's dwindling chemfuel reserve wouldn't last forever. The last of the crypto sleep caskets were deconstructed to make room for a communications console. With the console built and transmitting, the colony was now officially open for business, even if they had nothing to trade yet. Tharn resumed his tunneling operation and discovered another hidden chamber within the asteroid, a narrow network of natural tunnels. Sadly, no additional steel was found within. Biofuel refinement was soon completed, and the refinery was installed aboard the ship. The chemfuel generators once again ran dry. Tharn began the long walk back to refuel them, only to narrowly avoid death when 2 chunks of orbital debris slammed into the asteroid. With a way to produce fuel from organic material now available, the tribe knew they would need more rice. So plans were drawn up to expand the hydroponic systems. And then, for the first time, an orbital trader made contact, identifying themselves as Sun Interplanetary. Unfortunately, the colony had no silver and nothing worth selling, so the trader drifted out of range. Moments later, as if the universe had a sense of humor, a silver meteorite slammed into the asteroid's surface. Too late for trade, of course. Still, Tharn was sent outside to collect it. Drex, the colony's crafter, soon began converting rice into chem fuel using the new refinery, a major step towards sustainability. Then another orbital debris field impacted the asteroid. And amid all of this, the cold, the starvation, the vacuum, the exploding sky, Drex and Luma got engaged. Tharn resumed his exploratory mining, chipping deeper into the asteroid's dense crust, and struck another rich vein of compacted steel surprisingly quickly. Not long after, a cargo pod crash landed to the north, inside 11 Medicine. Then another quest. Once again from I'm a Believer. Apparently Grendel had been talking, and now another one of her friends, Leonid Dweeb LeBlanc, was eager to witness this so-called tribal grav ship in person. The offer? 25 Glitterworld Medicine, an enormous prize. But Dweeb's drop pod landed on the far side of the hull, well outside the pressurized zone. If left alone, he'd suffocate, then either freeze or boil, depending on the sun's position. So, Tharn sprang into action, playing a high-stakes game of construction Jenga, rapidly walling off corridors to funnel Dweeb towards safety. The guest made it inside with only minor vacuum burns. With a stable supply of food and power finally achieved, the tribe had time to look inward, toward faith, structure, and identity. The children of the machine, adrift in the black, would now appoint their first spiritual and intellectual leaders. Tharn became the ship father. Luma took on the mantle of voice of the core. And Orin was named the Data Acolyte. From scattered survivors to a structured society, the transformation had begun. Orin was granted access to a newly constructed high-tech research bench, a shining altar to the machine god, and a key to unlocking a higher tier of technology. Her first task, decipher the secrets of orbital infrastructure. Mastering this knowledge would allow the colony to fabricate vacuum suits, construct pressure sealing barriers, and install oxygen pumps, all essential for true expansion beyond their fragile foothold. Unfortunately, the new bench drew a little more power than the grid could handle. A bit, in this case, meant the colony entered a full-blown brownout. The sun lamp flickered, and the life support systems took a brief, unplanned vacation. To stabilize the grid, a solar panel was installed outside, and one of the previously idle chem fuel generators was finally wired in. Because nothing says technological advancement like scrambling to keep the air breathable. Amidst the chaos of progress, a combat supplier calling themselves Cool Partners hailed the station. Tharn traded what little the colony had and walked away with a normal quality chain shotgun, just in case diplomacy failed. Orbital technology research was complete, unlocking vacuum barriers, exactly what you'd expect, high-tech shields that keep the vacuum of space at bay, while letting colonists pass through without losing any precious air. However, these barriers require a rare material, gravlite panels, which the colony can't yet manufacture. To solve this, Tharn began stripping down non-essential parts of the ship's substructure, especially around the old engine compartments. Each salvaged tile yielded one precious gravlite panel. Next, a machining table was blueprinted and constructed to start crafting vacuum suits. Each suit and helmet required 5 components, 130 steel and 20 plasteel. But with only 10 plasteel in storage and just one skilled miner and builder, producing additional suits wasn't an immediate priority. With the new technology unlocked, plans were laid out to expand the internal pressurized chamber within the asteroid. First, the outer tunnel entrances were sealed off. Then Tharn installed some of the ship's extra oxygen generators inside the cavern. While this was happening, research began on obtaining a multi-analyzer. The oxygen pumps were connected to the grid and began driving out the vacuum. However, 3 pumps weren't enough to fully pressurize the cave. Tharn estimated that the ship's full complement of pumps, about 10 in total, might be sufficient to create a stable atmosphere inside the cavern. Even with all 10 pumps running, the room still contained around 22% vacuum. On top of that, the heaters couldn't keep the temperature from dropping well below freezing. To conserve heat and air, Tharn quickly built a door to separate the 2 rooms. Instead of trying to move into a massive labyrinth of tunnels, Tharn opted for a modest hallway. Slowly chipping away at the rock and building walls bit by bit seemed the smartest way to expand the colony's infrastructure, especially since the number of heaters and oxygen generators couldn't keep up with the rapid expansion. Perhaps it was the romantic haze of carbon monoxide poisoning wafting from the nearby chemfuel generator, or maybe they just wanted a memorable venue. Drex and Luma held their wedding ceremony in a cramped maintenance hallway. Nothing sets the mood like oxygen deprivation and the faint hum of combustion in the background. They were given a double bed. Another room above the current hydroponics setup was mined out and connected to the ventilation system. It was intended to become a second grow room, but for now it remained empty. An exotic goods trader hailed the comms console. A group going by the name of Virgil Interstellar. Among their wares, plasteel and gold, the final ingredients needed to build a multi-analyzer. The colony needed 40 plasteel and 3 gold, so Tharn reluctantly sold off 2 components to cover the cost. The materials arrived promptly, crashing down from orbit. That's when Tharn had a realization. The multi-analyzer also required 2 more components to actually be built. To recover from this logistical facepalm, the colony's last functioning auto door was scrapped, and Tharn made his way to a ship chunk in the north, hoping to salvage what he needed. He never quite made it. Instead, he suffered a mental break and wandered out into the vacuum of space in a daze. Eventually, Tharn snapped out of his daze, perhaps motivated by the creeping chill of space or the shame of his budgeting skills, and began hauling the salvage materials to the multi-analyzer project. But before construction could begin, the ship arrived to collect Dweeb. Tharn, the ever-reluctant chauffeur, carried the guest to the shuttle and saw him off. The quest was complete, and true to their word, the promised reward, 25 Little World medicine, dropped from orbit shortly after. Finally, the multi-analyzer was constructed, a gleaming beacon of scientific progress cobbled together from salvaged ship parts and last-minute trades. With it, Orin now had access to a vast library of advanced research, unlocking the true depths of late-game technology. Luma has fallen pregnant. The gravity of the asteroid was clearly interfering with a local group's cargo pod launches. 2 staggered waves of pods came down erratically, landing amidst a nearby crashed, compacted steel asteroid. Orin had become an incredibly efficient researcher, boasting a research speed of 515%. It was no surprise that the colony had reached late-game technology in just 1 year. Another tourism quest arrived, this time from the Orange Sound settlement. Kyle Miles was eager to experience the tribal gravship firsthand. The colony accepted this quest in exchange for a Psi-Link neuroformer. Meanwhile, Drex put the intercepted smoke leaf to good use, rolling and storing joints to sell to the next visiting orbital trader. Then, finally, the Planetary Import Company arrived, a bulk goods trader. The colony sold 54 smoke leaf joints and 1,540 rice in exchange for much-needed supplies, 20 components, 2 advanced components, and 19 Gravlite panels. With these new resources, construction began on the colony's very own transport pod launcher. a crucial step towards eventually supplying a mining outpost on the surface of the RimWorld below. Meanwhile, the hydroponics array was completed, fully operational, thanks to the newly acquired components. Information possibly pointing the children of the machine toward their holy relic had surfaced. Stench, the holy starborn of the Trade Alliance, claimed to have uncovered an ancient complex, one that might contain details about a legendary artifact known as Hexlash. He requested 3 explorers from the colony to investigate. Oren, Tharn, and Drex were chosen for the task. They touched down in a searing lava-filled biome, with the small structure visible in the center of the blasted terrain. Oren pried open the long sealed door, only to be greeted by 37 desiccated skeletons. Long dead explorers who had lain undisturbed for over 150 years. Surprisingly, there was no danger left inside. Whatever catastrophe had claimed them was long past. After scouring the dusty halls and opening 3 hermetically sealed crates, the team located a series of ancient terminals. Oren began the data extraction. The terminals offered fragmented but valuable insights into Hexlash, enough to push the cult's obsession forward another step. With the data secured, the 3 boarded the shuttle and returned to their desolate rock. Relic dreams are now burning brighter than ever. Upon returning home, Oren immediately set to work and successfully unlocked the knowledge to construct and pilot the colony's very own passenger shuttles. There was, however, a complication. Each shuttle required a shuttle engine and a significant amount of plasteel, both of which were in short supply. Repairing and launching the gravship itself might seem like a faster solution, but without a functioning gravship anchor to tether it, doing so would erase all the progress made on the asteroid. Tharn began excavating another chamber identical to the hydroponics room. It housed another steel node, a welcome discovery. But midway through the dig, the shuttle arrived to collect Kyle Miles. And with it came a crisis. A ship-wide blackout. Most major systems went offline, all thanks to Drex forgetting to process more chem fuel from rice. Totally not me forgetting to turn the production building back on or anything. Fortunately, a few generators still had some limited reserves, keeping the life support systems humming barely. The colony lurched into a panicked frenzy, scrambling to shut down anything non-essential. The sun lamp, hydroponics basins, high-tech research bench, multi-analyzer, and all production equipment, save for the biofuel refinery. With just enough power scraped together, Drex rushed to synthesize a batch of chem fuel. The generators sputtered back to life, and the colony narrowly avoided the death spiral that is losing power in orbit. Miles was carried to the shuttle and sent off safely. The promised reward dropped shortly after, a Silink neuroformer, carefully stored away for the day a worthy candidate would rise. A quest came in from a knight of the Empire of the Spirit. He'd been caught in bed with the wrong person. In a bold display of rejection, he had the poor soul imprisoned, and now wants us to hold them for 14 days, while the scandal dies down. Because nothing says I'm not into you like launching someone into orbit to rot in a prison cell on a desolate asteroid. The offer was accepted in exchange for a new colonist, a man named German. The prisoner was unceremoniously dropped into the vacuum outside and dragged into a makeshift cell in the bow of the ship. With the new room finally dug out, the indoor temperature began to dip into uncomfortable territory. An industrial heater was installed in the hallway. A power-hungry beast that burns twice as much electricity as a standard heater, but can warm entire sections of the habitat with ease. Next came a nutrient paste setup, a dispenser, grinder, and storage vat, all neatly tucked into the freshly hollowed cavern. functional, efficient, and only mildly depressing. During the colony's mandatory floor smoothing time, Luma suddenly went into labor. Baby Gogo was born with a case of major infant sickness. Good thing the colony had a hoard of Glitterworld medicines stashed away. Oren handled the medical emergency flawlessly, delivering a 126% 10 quality. With a few more visits from the ship's pediatrician, Gogo is expected to make a full recovery. Another quest from the Trade Alliance. They want to offload 90 toxic waste packs onto the colony via transport pod. Their request was accepted. After all, it's always below freezing on this rock, and the waste only needs to stay frozen and stored inside a room to remain stable. In return, the colony would receive 1 Eltex and 42 plasteel. Both waves of pods crashed down as promised. Tharn designated a storage chamber in one of his previously excavated strip mines. But while Tharn was busy dragging bags of glowing sludge through vacuum, disaster struck. A power conduit short-circuited, instantly discharging the colony's entire battery bank in a blinding explosion. Fire broke out inside the hydroponics bay. It was dangerously close to becoming out of control. And through it all, Tharn continued his silent march, one toxic sack at a time, while the rest of the colony battled to keep their food supply from going up in smoke. The shuttle then arrived to collect the prisoner. He was loaded aboard and the quest was marked complete. German then officially joined the colony, fully equipped with his own vac suit. Emerging from the pod, German revealed himself to be psychically hypersensitive and iron-willed, an ideal candidate for the Psylink. Beyond his mental gifts, he proved to be a solid all-rounder, boasting skills in melee, construction, mining, and social. 100 days have slipped away since this once primitive tribe of lost souls stirred from their frozen slumber within the cold, silent womb of a forgotten grav ship. From the shadows of survival, they now reach toward the fragile dawn of understanding. A delicate spark of technology flickering in the vast darkness of space. Still in the cradle of their awakening, they stand on the brink of transformation, where time and perseverance hold the promise of becoming something far beyond their wildest dreams. German, the new recruit, inserted the Psylink into his brain, becoming a Psycaster. He would spec into one of the new mods I have installed, becoming a Gravcaster. The first ability he unlocked was Crush. This ability creates a small gravitational anomaly within the target, dealing 10 to 15 blunt damage. It was time to pursue an industry that might finally bring silver into our coffers. Clothing. With cloth steadily growing in the hydroponics basins, a tailor bench was built to begin the work. Space was of a premium, so the 3 obsolete steel research benches, relics of our early ignorance, were dismantled. In their place, the tailor bench was installed along with an art bench, with some hope that sculptures might breathe some soul into these cold, lifeless rooms. Drex's first attempt was crude and unimpressive, but then again, a first creation is rarely a masterpiece. Some cargo pods impacted the asteroid, this time containing coconuts. And not long after, the colony's first Archonic celebration opportunity arose. The celebration was held inside the dark dining room, where the colonists feasted on the unexpected bounty. It was a simple gathering, but a fun one, giving the children of the machine a +5 mood boost for 6 days. A combat supplier then contacted the colony. Even though we were still broke, German checked their inventory out of habit. And to his surprise, they had a shuttle engine listed. The price was ludicrous, over 3,000 silver. Still, it gave Drex a price range for this rare item. If enough clothing could be produced and sold, that engine might one day be ours. Some outfit stands were constructed to store the colony's 2 vac suits, helping prevent unnecessary wear from being left on the ground or worn around without need. The colony had entered a component shortage. When one of the solar panels broke down and demanded a component for repairs, tough decisions had to be made. The transport pod and its launcher were deconstructed, their valuable parts repurposed for survival. Not long after, a chem fuel generator gave out, forcing the colonists to scrap the machining table for its components. As the days grew colder, the single remaining industrial heater struggled to hold back the chills sweeping into the habitat. With what few components they'd managed to salvage, another heater was hastily built, enough to stabilize the temperature. Another compacted steel meteor struck the asteroid, followed closely by a shower of orbital debris. More essential systems started to falter, but fortunately losing one or two oxygen generators wasn't yet a critical threat. Another quest arrived, this time from the Trade Alliance, requesting permission to dump 128 toxic waste packs on our land. The colony accepted the deal in exchange for another Psi-Link new reformer. The waste packs landed right by the door to the storage cavern. Luckily, this delivery uncovered a rich vein of steel hidden within the walls during the expansion of the cavern to accommodate the growing pile of toxic waste packs, something Tharn and German might have otherwise missed. Baby Goga then became a child. Look at him, already playing hangman. His word game was interrupted by an exotic goods trader going by the name of Approachable Baboon Consortium. German, with a skip in his step, was eager to sell the pile of capes Drex had been tirelessly tailoring. Unfortunately, the traders weren't interested in fashion. Instead, German reluctantly parted with only one piece of Eltex in exchange for two components, just in case of more equipment breakdowns in future. The final chamber for this section of rooms was then planned for excavation and then smoothing. Temporary shelving was constructed to deal with the overwhelming clutter hoarded inside the ship. Shortly after, relations with the Empire took a slight hit. Apparently, that single Eltex stone German sold didn't go unnoticed. With the shelves completed, the colony's scattered belongings were finally stored away, bringing a much-needed sense of order to the cramped interior. The next crop to be harvested was tobacco. Cavern expansion came next. Half of the planned mining operation was undertaken, carving out a wide, semicircular hallway through the rock. The foundations of an asteroid city were beginning to take shape. With over 290 cigarettes in storage, the next cash crop was chosen: psychoid. But before the new seeds could be sown, one final harvest of tobacco was taken. At this point, Drex and Luma had become the economic backbone of the colony. Luma tirelessly sowing and harvesting the raw material, and Drex refining it into product and stocking it for trade. Luma then went into labor again. A healthy girl was born. She was named Rose. The new cash crop was harvested, yielding nearly 700 psychoid leaves. Since the compounds refined from these leaves are considered more hazardous, a specialized lab was constructed, using all but one of the colony's remaining components. Still, the investment was sound. The profits from these refined substances would quickly make up for the shortfall. Flake was selected for production, a good balance of affordability and market value, assuming the prices held steady. Another quest soon arrived from the Trade Alliance, once again asking to dump toxic waste packs on our land. In return, a masterwork Gauss revolver. The offer was accepted. Shortly after, 177 waste packs rained down, followed by the revolver itself. With the waste once again overwhelming the storage cavern, further excavation was needed. During this expansion, German reached a new Psi-Link level and used it to learn how to redirect resource-rich meteors from orbit to a location of his choosing. Before German could test his newfound ability, the exotic goods trader, Pleather Travelers, hailed the comms console. He rushed over to respond. Among their wares was a shuttle engine, exactly what the colony needed. German began offloading everything the colony had recently produced, sparing only the capes, which despite Drex's tireless effort, still have found no buyers. Even after selling it all, he was still short by roughly 200 silver. So, a few units of Glitterworld medicine were reluctantly added to the deal. The trade was finalized and the engine was delivered, just outside the airlock. Now, only plasteel and components stood between the colony and its first transport shuttle. The internals of the massive dining and recreation hall were next to be excavated. As the digging began, the crash of a compacted steel meteor reminded me of German's recently unlocked powers, so he put them to use. Three asteroids were called down, rich with granite and compacted steel. This newfound ability was frankly quite overpowered. While German experimented with orbital resource delivery, the colossal room was finally hollowed out. Unfortunately, the two industrial heaters couldn't keep up with the ever-creeping cold. To combat this, the room was split in half, with two doors to trap in the heat, though doing this meant the airflow would be completely cut off to the new room, welcoming in the vacuum. Luma has fallen pregnant again. German, wasting no time, summoned more meteors, this time bringing limestone, silver ore, and yet more steel crashing down onto the rock. German was once again summoning meteors from the void, raining down riches upon the colony. But his celestial handiwork was interrupted by the arrival of a trade ship. The colony quickly sold off more goods, securing 20 much-needed components. The three meteors that followed were a bonanza, packed with Eltex, jade, and compacted machinery. This would be the last time German could call down such meteors outside of combat. It was just too powerful, and allowing it unchecked would have made the whole goal of building a passenger shuttle and a mining outpost on the surface just pointless, so yeah. Power cables were laid within the walls of the newly expanded, freezing and airless room. To address the lack of atmosphere, oxygen generators were installed near the doorway. Goga then turned 7. The trait options presented were disappointing, so none were selected. However, she did develop passions for shooting and intellectual pursuits. Alongside the room expansion, power generation and storage were increased. 2 additional solar panels and large batteries were planned and constructed. Two more industrial heaters were also installed in the empty room, successfully stabilizing its temperature. With the completion of the project's shell, the children of the machine's expectations rose. Now they desire their ideology's shrine and sculpture, while individually longing for neural superchargers. The headache begins. The construction of the temple to house the colony's ideological buildings was underway. Tharn and German tackled the monumental task of mining out the massive chamber. While the initial excavation seemed to be the hardest part, the real test was just beginning, smoothing the entire floor and walls, a painstaking process that would take far longer, but was essential for the ideological buildings, all of which required properly finished flooring. Luma went into labor once again, During this time, a female psychic soothe washed over the colony, a welcome and calming presence. A healthy girl was born, named Gooba. The first building required by the children of the machine, the machinist's image, a large sculpture, was installed inside the unfinished chamber. This caused some tension among the colonists as the sculpture demanded respect. It needed a dedicated room with finished flooring and no workstations allowed inside. To separate this sacred space from the rest, a jade ornate door was constructed. Rose then became a child after reaching the age of 3. A bulk goods trader named Fabio Partners made contact. German sold 284 flake and finally managed to sell all of Drex's capes. In return, he purchased 51 components, 2 advanced components, and 200 plasteel. After some time, the temple's flooring was nearly complete, and plans were made for the large altar, the unified platform. With all the required materials gathered, construction of the passenger shuttle could finally begin. German got to work assembling the parts and built the vehicle. Some mist flooring inside the temple was carefully smoothed over and lighting was installed. Plans were made to add 8 neural superchargers inside. These superchargers were power hungry, each consuming 400 watts. So 2 additional solar panels were constructed to meet the increased demand. Finally, the altar was completed, along with the neural superchargers. Just in time for the annual Archonic celebration to be held within the newly finished chamber. The festival concluded with a fun quality rating. Somehow, a wanderer caught word of the celebration and wished to join the Children of the Machine. Unfortunately, the offer had to be declined. Being in orbit renders many quests either unavailable or impossible to complete. Next, it was finally time to move the beds out of the grav ship and into the vacant room above the hydroponics bay. With the rice stores running low, the entire hydroponics array was temporarily switched to growing rice exclusively. During the replanting, another bulk goods trader, General Pigeon Traders, contacted the colony. The last batch of flake was sold off in exchange for 20 components and 600 steel. With resources in hand, new bedrooms were planned, their layout following the curvature of the hallway. A small area was hollowed out to make space for an industrial chem fuel generator. Though bulkier than its standard counterpart, it produces more than double the 1000 watts generated by the smaller standard version. With the shuttle idle and nowhere to go, a long-range mineral scanner was constructed just outside the airlock. Oren equipped a vac suit and began scanning for minerals on the RimWorld's surface. Thanks to her high intellectual skill and favorable traits, the scanner operated at 739% efficiency, making discovery almost instant. A steel deposit was found first, followed shortly by a vein of components. German, Tharn, and Drex loaded themselves and 300 units of rice onto the shuttle and began their descent onto the surface. They landed near a massive chunk of compacted machinery, but were immediately ambushed by a lone tribesperson armed with a club. It was the perfect chance for German to test more of his psi-casting abilities on this unfortunate soul. As the lone tribesman charged, a stream of meteors screamed down from the sky, slamming onto the earth just meters from his path. Undeterred, he pressed on, club in hand. Then came the gunfire, clean and precise from Tharn's masterwork revolver. He died having ignored several fairly obvious red flags. A lone man casually summoning meteors probably wasn't someone you wanted to fight with a stick. After dealing with the unusually determined raider, the team mined out 133 components and loaded them onto the shuttle. With the cargo secured, they prepared for the return trip to the asteroid. And then a problem. The shuttle couldn't make the flight back. The return path somehow exceeded the maximum range. Apparently, getting into orbit is harder than falling out of it. Who knew? Unable to launch and unwilling to strand some of my best colonists on the surface with a handful of rice, I did what any responsible leader would do. I reloaded a slightly older save and pretended this never happened. For now, the mineral scanner was switched off and a new plan set in motion. What was needed now was a grav anchor, the only thing that could get the grav ship off the asteroid without wiping out all of the progress made so far, as taking off without one destroys the map tile. The catch? It was hideously expensive to build. More waiting for materials. Yay. Honestly, I'm pretty sure I was just using the shuttle wrong, but since it was my first playthrough, I figured it was easier to switch plans entirely rather than banging my head against the mechanics of orbital travel. More materials were needed from orbital traders, so in the meantime, the second part of the hallway was planned for tunneling. Funnily enough, not long after, an exotic goods trader contacted the colony. German answered and sold off 84 flake, 7 gold, and 54 LTEX. Selling these rare stones would definitely hurt relations with the Empire down the line, but their sheer value was too tempting to resist. In return, German bought the trader's entire stock of plasteel along with 3 advanced components to put towards the grav anchor. Goga had hit a growth milestone, turning 10 years old. He gained the academician trait and developed passions for medicine, construction, and mining. To celebrate his birthday, he was sent straight to work in the mines. Next on the agenda was excavating the cavern that would become the workshop, a large room shaped to follow the curve of the newly created hallway. Another orbital debris field started to impact the asteroid. The solar panels took a glancing blow, almost destroying them, as well as the hallway connecting the ship to the asteroid being blown open, exposing the living quarters to the harsh vacuum of space. Good thing the beds were moved from the ship into their own dedicated room with an oxygen generator and vents. Tharn and German frantically equipped their vac suits while Drex rapidly closed the vents, sealing the vacuum from invading the barracks. The two quickly rebuilt the walls, and once complete, the straining oxygen generators slowly pushed back the vacuum. After that close call, the outer walls, exposed to outer space, were thickened for insurance. Drex was once again at the tailoring bench, crafting clothing for both practical use and trade. Meanwhile, Guba turned 3, officially entering childhood. Then, during Luma's 4th labor, inspiration struck. As his partner gave birth just meters away, Drex was overcome with a sudden urge to sculpt. While others focused on the delivery of a new life, Drex was already planning his next artistic masterpiece. A healthy boy was born, named Trogo. Setting aside his usual work, Drex began chiseling away at a grand sculpture. It was no small task, over 2,000 work units of focused labor. But when it was finally complete, it emerged as a masterwork. On this piece is an illustration of Drex Tinkerscribe working on a cape with a gleam in his eye. The cape is intricately detailed. The static structure of the image almost conflicts with its romantic style. This representation tells the story of Drex completing work on a cape on the 9th of August 5504. It would be a perfect addition to the temple, providing a massive amount of beauty to the room. and a gentle reminder that inspiration can strike at truly questionable times. A bulk goods trader known as Barry Traders made contact, and German traded extensively with them. He sold off half of the colony's rice reserves, Silink, some agave nectar that had fallen from drop pods, and the entire stockpile of clothing. In return, he secured 30 components and 1,300 steel. This influx of raw material would be enough to finally begin restoring the grav ship. More orbital debris fell from the sky. Fortunately, this time it landed far from the habitat and posed no immediate threat. It was time to begin the restoration and downsizing of the grav ship. The first components installed were a pilot's console and a large chem fuel tank. Meanwhile, Rose reached the age of 7. She became an optimist, with budding passions in shooting and plants. The final component needed for the grav anchor was 80 gravlite panels. To produce them, a fabrication bench was installed in the empty workshop, and a production order was queued. Each panel required 1 plasteel and 5 vac stone. To clear space around the construction site, large batteries were relocated inside the habitat, along with the multi-analyzer. The high-tech research bench was deconstructed temporarily. Then, a uranium meteor came crashing through the hallway roof, violently depressurizing the corridor. Tharn and German were working nearby and scrambled to plug the breach before the vacuum spread further. Lastly, a new room was tunneled out to house additional industrial chem fuel generators. The habitat would need to be entirely self-sufficient in terms of power generation from now on, as once the grav ship left for a quest or mining expedition, so would half of the power supply as well. The grav ship's external hull was then deconstructed. During this process, more orbital debris rained down, nearly crushing Tharn in the chaos. Just as the dust settled, a combat supplier pinged the comms console. Their name? Meteor Securities. Funny coincidence that. A cluster of orbital debris slams into the asteroid, then a company named Meteor Securities just happened to be in the neighborhood. Anyways, German traded with them and bought 16 components. Now the new hull was being laid out, and the old substructure was slowly dismantled. And when I say slowly, I mean painfully slow. Each panel had to be manually marked for deconstruction, or Tharn and German would trap themselves on some awkward floating piece of floor. Eventually though, all the old panels were cleared, and the grav ship's new hull was finally complete. Some internal systems were rearranged and new additions were constructed. A nutrient paste dispenser and storage vat, and a massive grav ship crate capable of holding up to 72 stacks of materials, perfect for the future mining expeditions this cargo ship would undertake. Since the children of the machine aren't fond of planetary living, exquisite flooring was planned for throughout the ship, along with the placement of small sculptures to add a touch of beauty to their synthetic sanctuary. Next, the grav anchor was finally constructed in its own dedicated room. Not long after, another trader contacted the colony. A bulk goods ship by the name of Lucian Solutions. Germans sold off all the remaining clothing and 600 cloth in exchange for 1,500 steel. The final addition for the grav ship was engines. 2 large engines. The ship was finally ready for launch, equipped with all the necessary items and systems to support its journey. Oren, Tharn, and German boarded, preparing for their first real test, a mission to a nearby chunk of compacted machinery. The engines roared to life, lifting the hull from the asteroid's surface and carrying it toward the mining site. From tribals frozen in time to machine-bound pioneers, the children of the machine had transcended their origins, and now, with the gravship soaring across the void, their journey of technological advancement was slingshot into a new era, one no longer bound by the whims of the stars, but shaped by their own hands. The ship landed nearby to a chunk of machinery. The crew would have plenty of time for mining operations, as the engines need to cool down for 4 days. Along with the central mining site, many exposed resources were designated for mining as well. During the extraction of steel, Luma went into labor again. Her 5th child was born healthy and he was named Rango. With around 150 components extracted and over 3,000 steel mined, a new opportunity arose. A quest to host a secret meeting of sanguiphages, or vampires. The offer was accepted in exchange for another Psi-Link neuroformer. Soon after, the vampires arrived and began their unsettling ritual within the grav ship. When the meeting concluded, one of them, a woman named Morgan, requested to join the colony. She possessed excellent traits and decent all-round skills, but more importantly, she was a fast learner, capable of mastering almost anything given time. Unnerving as her presence might be, colonists were still in short supply back at the asteroid, and so Morgan was welcomed into the fold. Goober then turned 7 years old, obtaining the Great Memory trait, as well as becoming passionate about shooting and planting. After what felt like an age, the entire map had been stripped of its exposed resources and the materials secured within the gravship's storage. A staggering 4,500 steel and 150 components were extracted from the lands. With nothing left to gather, the gravship prepared for launch, only to discover once again that it didn't have enough engine power to return to the asteroid. A new landing site was chosen, slightly closer to home's orbit. And then the ship roared to life once more, climbing into the sky. It touched down in the center of the map, nearby to an ancient danger. German's curiosity piqued. He carefully breached the corner of the ancient structure, only to find himself staring into a nightmare. Towering amalgamations of cancerous, writhing flesh, mutated horrors seemingly designed for one purpose, to kill everything. For now, they remained undisturbed and unaware of our presence. More engines were needed, but the grav ship was out of vaxstone. Fortunately, an ancient transport pod that had been idle nearby was finally put to use, delivering a large supply of vaxstone to the surface. With the new materials in hand, parts of the ship's hull were torn open and fitted with 2 additional large engines. While waiting for the engines to cool down, German decided it was time to confront the horrors sealed inside the ancient structure. He released the abominations from their eternal prison to relieve them of their twisted existence. The freaks were slain, and the loot they had been guarding was quickly claimed. Among the spoils were crypto-sleep caskets containing 2 non-hostile survivors, Fur and Horton. German incapacitated Horton with his increased gravity ability. And both were rescued and stabilized. Once Horton's artificial gravity field wore off, he agreed to join the Children of the Machine. Fur, unfortunately, succumbed to an infection before he could be recruited. At last, the engines had cooled, and the grav ship launched back toward the asteroid. Upon arrival, a small prison was planned out, inside a vacant bedroom. Intended to convert the 2 new colonists to the correct ideology. Horton and Morgan were both arrested for re-education. With the new influx of colonists, both from recruitment and births, the bedrooms along the eastern hallway were finally equipped with oxygen generators, vents and doors. The workshop also received an upgrade, with large versions of the machining table and tailoring bench installed. Though expensive, these enhanced workstations provide a significant boost to crafting speed. Well worth the extra materials required. Drex and Luma finally got a bedroom of their own. Frankly, everyone else was probably relieved. They had been disturbing sleep in the communal barracks for long enough. All 5 of their children were conceived in that room, despite the complete lack of privacy. Horton was soon converted and released from prison, the first planet dweller to awaken to the strange joys of life on this lonely asteroid. During this time, the new storeroom just below the workshop was nearly complete. So all of the temporary shelves, which had occupied their temporary room for the past 5 years, were finally moved into the new space. While the colony reorganized, Morgan, the vampire, was fully converted in prison and released. Now a loyal follower of the Children of the Machine. Morgan, being a vampire, had some special requirements, namely Death Rest and Hemogen. Death Rest was easy enough to manage. Hemogen, on the other hand, was trickier. Without an unlucky prisoner to serve as a walking blood bag, Morgan would have to feed on her fellow colonists. Unsurprisingly, this left them with a -5 mood debuff. Apparently, getting your blood drained by a vampire isn't the most pleasant experience. Finally, the shelves were moved and a new sun lamp was placed in the center of the room, followed by an extensive amount of hydroponic basins. A party was then held within the rec room, with new lavish amenities, some still being under construction. All the recent upgrades quickly consumed the 6,600 steel brought back from the first mining expedition. Another ship launch would soon be necessary. Meanwhile, life aboard the asteroid carried on. Tharn enjoyed the new recreation options, playing a soothing melody on a standing piano, while German taught Guba, and Horton crafted armchairs around the poker table. Before the next mining expedition, the Children of the Machine held a celebration, meant to lift the crew's spirits before their extended stay on world. Unfortunately, the gathering was a dull affair. No matter, the spirits could wait. Raw materials could not. The grav ship was fueled and launched toward another compacted machinery chunk. The landing site was nestled deep in a mountainous region, and a welcoming party consisted of a pack of rabid felines. Thankfully, they were just house cats. German put them out of their misery with quick efficiency. With the threat neutralized, the crew began scanning the map for exposed resources. Mining orders were placed. I would like to show clips of the extraction of the steel, but one of the mods, Progress Renderer, causes this flickering effect when off the home map tile, as it needs to quickly switch back to the home colony and take a screenshot. This happens within 3 frames of video, but I have it set to screenshot every hour in-game time, so it flickers quite a lot. Jumping ahead 12 days, Goga hauls the final chunk of steel into the gravship's storage. The expedition had been a major success. Another 200 components, 6,000 steel, and 1,000 uranium now safely loaded aboard. The ship launched once more, returning home heavy with the spoils of hard labor. Shortly after returning home, the generators were once again left unfueled and unmaintained, causing a minor power outage. Naturally, I again blamed Drex for not refining any fuel. Oh, never mind. Goober then reached the age of 10. He became a fast walker, gaining passions in crafting, melee, shooting, and arts. A nutrient paste grinder and storage vat setup was constructed in a larger room to the north. Now for more ideology headaches. Tharn and the others start to demand age reversal. The first cotton harvest was nearly ready in the newly finished hydroponics basins, which were now dedicated exclusively to growing economy-driven crops. Trogo's 7th birthday, becoming cold inclined and gaining passions for crafting and mining. Rose, not long after, then turned 13. She became a snob, gaining passions in construction, intellectual and social skills. Another monumental mining effort was planned for in the north. The mining was done. Now for the smoothing of the rough stone. Finally, a research lab was reconstructed within one of the newly tunneled rooms. Morgan's death rest chamber was rather dull, so the tunnel to the north was extended to accommodate plans for a more lavish and fitting space. Not long after, Luma and Morgan got into a social fight, with Luma taking the worst of it. The injuries led to an infection festering in her left arm, a major risk to the health of her unborn child. Thankfully, the stockpile of RimWorld medicine was on hand. Even with the advanced medical treatment, however, Luma still miscarried sometime later, leaving both her and Drex deeply upset. Life on the colony pressed on. A flat-screen TV and a set of modular couches were built inside the recreation room, offering the crew a place to unwind. Plans were then drawn up for a larger laboratory to handle the increased plant matter flowing in from the new hydroponics array. While shelving for the lab was under construction, a combat supplier's trade ship passed through the area. Germans seized the opportunity to sell off the colony's recent flake production. The tunnel was almost complete, only the chamber itself remained for the miners to excavate. Once dug out, the entire hallway would be smoothed. Meanwhile, Oren uncovered a lump of plasteel on the surface, prompting another mining expedition. The ship landed in a strange formation of mountains, and the crew began stripping the area of anything valuable. During the operation, a request came from a woman named Element. She confessed to violating a peace ritual between Wit Dur and the Messiah men. Now, both factions were hunting her, and would arrive to raid the outpost in 3 days if she was taken in. Element was welcomed into the colony. Her traits were promising: neat, industrious, and chemically fascinated. She also had a strong passion for mining, though little else. Not long after, Tharn received grim news at the end of his mining shift: organ decay in his heart. Without a donor or a synthetic replacement, it would fail in 42 days. When the raiders finally arrived, their mutual hatred turned the battle into chaos. The two factions slaughtered each other, leaving only a few standing. German took advantage, lobbing a meteor onto an unlucky survivor's head. The rest broke and fled. One raider was captured alive, the perfect donor for Tharn's new heart. The ship was finally fully loaded and launched back to the asteroid. Upon landing, Pierce was immediately recaptured and returned to prison. With Tharn's upcoming operation in mind, one of the vacant rooms was refurbished into a proper hospital, sterile tiles laid down, and hospital beds installed to maximize surgical success. Power was still a constant struggle. The batteries simply weren't charging fast enough. 2 chem fuel generators were hastily constructed beside the grav anchor, just barely stabilizing the situation. Oren performed Pierce's surgery first, which was a success. The harvested heart would only last 14 hours, so Tharn's procedure followed immediately after. Another flawless operation. Trogo reached a growth moment at age 10, becoming kind and gaining passions in mining, intellectual, shooting, and social skills. Life on the asteroid carried on in its own rhythm. Rango, Oren, and Drex could often be found in the recreation room, each absorbed in their own little corner of leisure. Rango sat hunched over the old-school computer, his eyes darting across the flickering screen as he mashed the keys in some pixelated game that hadn't been popular in decades. Oren stood near the industrial radio, arms loosely folded as slow, soothing tunes crackled through the air. The space felt alive, not with the roar of machinery or the bustle of work, but with the quiet hum of people who had, against all odds, built a life out here. Meanwhile, construction began on the death rest chamber. It would need a casket and, for now, a death rest accelerator. Then came Luma's 6th labor. The delivery went smoothly, and soon enough, a healthy baby boy was in her arms. I decided it would be hilarious to name him Beer because my overtired brain thought, yep, that's the peak of comedy right there. And so Beer he was, forever enshrined in the colony roster as living proof that I probably should get some more rest. Some of the outer hydroponics basins were switched to dye production. Rango turned 7, becoming psychically hypersensitive and developing passions for mining, animals, shooting, and socializing. Large and grand statues were queued at the art bench to further elevate the space's atmosphere. Finally, a stroke of economic fortune arrived. Advanced Solutions, a bulk goods trader, contacted the colony. Goga handled the deal, selling off the latest batch of clothing and narcotics for a staggering 8,144 silver. With the profits, the colony purchased 36 components, 2 advanced components, and 1,200 steel. Now for the expansion of the grav ship. The substructure was blueprinted and constructed, followed by the addition of hull parts. Next, the entire interior was rearranged to make room for more lavish living quarters, complete with art, a dining table and chairs, and even bedside tables. Alongside these improvements, 2 more nutrient paste vats were installed, allowing for much longer surface missions before food supplies ran low. 2 large, long grav storage crates were added as well, each capable of holding up to 80 stacks of materials. Morgan's death rest chamber was finished, the walls and floors painted, 2 large sculptures installed. Finally, Morgan could give it a test run. The newly refurbished grav ship was put to the test, launched toward a recently scanned plasteel deposit on the planet's surface. Upon landing, the crew were immediately ambushed by a rabid bullfrog. After the frenzied creature was put out of its misery, the exposed mineral veins were marked for extraction. 6 days later, the resources were mined and loaded into the ship's cargo containers. The crew prepared for the return trip, only to find the asteroid's orbit was slightly just out of range from their current position. A closer landing site was selected instead. Touching down once more, they discovered a bounty of valuable materials and set off to work. Midway through the mining operation, a drop pod came screaming from the sky, crashing nearby. Inside was a pregnant woman named T, battered but alive. Oren quickly tended to her injuries and brought her aboard. With the ship's cargo hold already packed and more ore still waiting to be hauled, an additional storage crate was hastily constructed, even if it ended up blocking the hallway. Grateful for her rescue, T decided that life aboard the ship was far preferable to the dangers lurking outside in the wilderness of this hostile world. Luma then went into labor back on the asteroid. Another healthy baby boy was born, named Bio. Oren and Tharn then became lovers. The ship was moments from launch, just a few more loads of ore left to haul. Then disaster struck. A hostile raiding party came crashing straight through the roof in a barrage of drop pods. The crew scattered, slipping out the airlock to take up firing positions outside. Inside, the raiders found the ship deserted. Wasting no time, they began ripping out vital components. The grav engine was unbolted and hauled away, followed by all 3 cargo containers. The neatly packed cargo exploded across the deck, even spilling outside in a glittering avalanche of minerals. Outside, Goga, Oren, and German lay in wait. As the raiders emerged, weighed down by their stolen prizes, they were gunned down with ease, too busy clutching their loot to even return fire. Only one attacker survived. His name was Ye. His fate would be worse than death. He would become a blood bag for Morgan. the vampire to feed upon. A small cell was hastily built to hold him while the crew began the backbreaking task of reloading the spilled cargo. 2 days of constant hauling later, the ship was once again ready for launch. Packed inside the reinforced storage crates were 78 components, 14,780 steel, 959 plasteel, 1,154 uranium, and 172 jade. A haul that would keep the asteroid supplied for a long time. With the holds full and the systems repaired, the grav ship lifted off, bearing home toward the safety of the asteroid. The floors were painted a dark greyish black with the last of the leftover dye. The massive hallway leading toward Morgan's death rest chamber would no longer remain empty. Plans were drawn out for a line of bedrooms branching off its length. T, the newly joined colonist, went into labor. A healthy girl was born, named Tara. With most of the rooms now excavated, attention turned to furnishing them with modern, ergonomic beds. They were expensive, 70 steel and 3 components each, but offered a clear boost to bed rest compared to the solid Vaxstone slabs currently in use. Drogo reached adulthood at age 13, becoming brave and developing passions in mining, crafting, shooting, and social. Shortly after, a high psychic drone descended on the colony. For those who were psychically hypersensitive, the droner was pure agony. German and Rango endured a negative 54 mood penalty. German eventually gave in, destroying furniture in his quarters. During the same period, Rango turned 10, becoming a perfectionist, with passions in art, crafting, melee, and construction. More trouble came from above. Orbital debris rained down again, glancing off the solar panels, but doing no real harm. Meanwhile, the grav anchor was relocated from its awkward original position to an enclosed room. Its old place was repurposed for additional chem fuel generators, feeding power to more neural superchargers. Component shortages hit sooner than expected, so Drex was assigned to the fabrication benches, churning out new parts from the steel reserves. At last, the bedrooms were completed. Ergonomic beds, oxygen generators, vents, bedside tables, lighting, and artwork adorned each one, leaving space for future upgrades as well. To mark the occasion, Tharn led an archonic celebration. The event concluded at a fun quality, lifting spirits across the crew. A wanderer named Shadows requested to join the colony after hearing about the ritual, but with no real way to reach the asteroid, his plea had to be denied. A new room was tunneled out near the ever-expanding biosculpting chamber. The pods were all relocated and growth vats were installed in their place. Ovum harvesting was the next step in the utilization of the vats, with Horton completing the final stage of the process. 3 new vat-grown children were now developing inside their steel wombs. The next mining expedition was launched, targeting a rich vein of components. After 4 days, 177 components and 5,800 steel had been extracted. With the cargo hold far from full, another site was selected. The ship lifted off and landed near another clump of components. Another 4 days passed. Just before preparations for takeoff were completed, the Vat children began to emerge. First Can, then Ram, and finally Gotro. They returned to their pods until reaching age 3. Before the ship departed, Orin decided it was a good time to distance herself from Tharn. With that settled, the ship launched once more, carrying 348 components and over 10,000 steel. With these new materials, the grav ship was ready for yet another upgrade. The old furniture was removed, and the blueprints for the expanded substructure was laid out. In the meantime, the nutrient paste network was expanded, hollowing out a larger, more appropriately sized room for additional storage vats. The vat-grown children began to emerge from their pods. Can, Ram, and Gotro were now fully fledged children, moving and interacting with their surroundings. Orbital debris rained down upon the asteroid. Rango reached adulthood at age 13, gaining passions in social, arts, construction, and crafting, as well as acquiring the tough trait. Parts of the grav ship's hull were then blueprinted on the new substructure. To complete the colony's transhumanist transformation, bionic replacements would be required to replace the limitations of organic limbs. Grav ship expansion was briefly interrupted when Tharn entered a sudden, murderous rage. Luck intervened. Morgan, with her vampire agility and long jump ability, swiftly restrained Tharn before any harm could occur. A new ambitious mining and construction project was launched by the colony. During the operation, Goga and T became lovers, cementing a new bond among the crew. A series of 4 rooms, separated by thick walls, was designated for the new power generation facilities. The ship was expanded further, only for it to become clear that the substructure and hull had exceeded what a single grav engine could support. Major deconstruction was undertaken to correct the imbalance. Beer, the comically named child, reached the age of 7. He gained passions in planting and melee, as well as becoming a quick sleeper. Meanwhile, the nutrient paste network had stopped working due to a bug in the mod. Apparently a patch released by the devs broke it. Oh well, a traditional nutrient paste grinder was put in its place instead. Another grouping of hydroponics was in the process of construction. I somehow, in between recording sessions, forgot that the ship previously exceeded its building limits and again expanded the ship's hull. Before I find out the hard way again, let's move on to the unfortunate genetics of the vat-grown child that is Can. He has the hair of a 65-year-old at the age of 4. Luma then went into labor again, giving birth to a healthy boy named Orange. For the new influx of children being born into the colony, more bedrooms were tunneled out. The next project inside the ship was its very own temple, so the colonists wouldn't have to endure the hardship of leaving the asteroid's lavish living quarters. With this temple, the mood debuff experienced after an extended planetary stay would be completely eliminated. The temple was completed, and I finally realized the ship had grown again too large. Another deconstruction would be necessary, but luck, or my impatience, intervened. A grav field extender just fell from the sky, landing right next to the grav engine. It totally wasn't me just spawning one in, or anything, out of annoyance. No, I wouldn't do that. Work on the grav ship could continue now, and during this effort, T went into labor, giving birth to a healthy child named Gazelle. Moving on, Bio reached age 7 and he gained passions in shooting, mining and social skills along with becoming a body modder. Jumping ahead to the completion of the new grav ship. We begin at the heart of logistics, the storeroom. Rows of chem fuel tanks feed the engines, while grav storage crates swallow up everything mined from the surface below. Even the food is automated. A nutrient paste dispenser with rice reserves to keep the crew alive, no matter how long the voyage. But survival isn't only physical, it's spiritual. To keep their faith alive, the crew has built a shrine to the machine, an inbuilt temple glowing in the void. Here they remember who they serve, or what they are becoming. Down the corridor are the barracks. Nothing tribal about these anymore. Advanced beds, sleep accelerators, illuminated tables, comforts bought with a mountain of components. At the ship's core burns the grav engine. Without it, the vessel is just another asteroid. With it, the tribe has freedom, and the burden of constant upkeep. Meals and decisions share one space, the dining room and command center. Colonists eat at an interactive table, watch their wall-mounted display, or pore over the old computer. And finally, the prison, a holding cell for captives pulled from expeditions below. The ship was now ready for another mining expedition to the surface. Upon landing, the crew immediately set to work extracting nearby plasteel. Some took advantage of the sleep accelerators to catch up on missed rest, but a fault in the power grid soon became apparent. Each accelerator draws 50 watts when idle, but 400 watts when in use. Multiplied by 8 units, this consumed most of the ship's onboard power. For the time being, the devices were switched off. During this mining trip back on the asteroid, Can and Astro decided to grab a beer. A ritual that, in their case, simply meant relaxing in the recreation room. They chose a spot nearby to Ram while he busied himself with the old school computer. Amid the hum of machinery and the faint glow of screens, the two young minds delved into surprisingly weighty topics for a 6 and 5-year-old. They pondered on the nature of anarchy and its echoes in the history of old Earth, discussed the complicated dance between governments and personal regrets, and even celebrated the curious glory of Astro's emerging facial hair. In these quiet moments, the absurdity of youth and the gravity of thought intertwined. A small glimpse into the shaping of future philosophers aboard the drifting asteroid. The ship was fully loaded with materials, this time not carrying as much components, only 41, but a far better bounty of steel, plasteel and gold. Not long after returning home, a field of orbital debris impacted the asteroid again. We began as a small, fractured group of tribals frozen in time. Each day was a struggle for survival, each dawn a test of human resilience. And now look at the colony. The asteroid hums with hundreds of machines. The future generations of the so-called tribe grow in their vats. Their reach extends far beyond anything their distant ancestors could have imagined. Yet with every artificial ecosystem, every bionic replacement, are they still the same tribe that once huddled around a fire beneath the stars? Or have they become something else entirely? Perhaps in the tireless pursuit of mastery over this inhospitable rock, they have forgotten the rhythm of simpler days, the cadence of raw life, of fire on skin, and soil beneath their feet. And maybe, just maybe, one day they will remember. Not because they must, but because part of them still longs for the world as it once was. Before the machine cult, before the cold embrace of steel, before the void became home. The colony was no longer bound to this lonely rock, so why stay? Go back. I want to be Monkey. The 5 original survivors, Tharn, German, Orin, Drex, and Luma, stood before the grav engine, the heart of their technological prison. For years it had carried them across the void, fed their ambitions, and sustained their artificial lives. Yet in its hum and steel, they felt the weight of its constraint, the subtle erosion of their freedom, the slow drift away from the lives they once knew. Now it was a chain guiding them to a future they no longer wanted. With quiet understanding, they struck. The grav engine shattered. The hum of machinery fell silent. They had learned to let go of the vast power they had once depended on, not with anger or regret, but with a resolve to reclaim the untamed pulse of life and the instinctive joy of existence unbound by circuits and servos. The tribe was free. They could return to the raw rhythm of the world, to fire and soil, to the life they had once known, and they now chose to reclaim it. The fire crackles and the river hums around them. They are no longer pawns of steel and circuits, no longer prisoners of ambition. Here, on this island, they remember what it is to be alive. The rhythm of life beats in their hearts once more. And for the first time in ages, they are truly home. Thanks for watching my tribe develop and go full circle. I thought this would be quite a fitting ending to what I hope was an interesting story for you. Much love. Peace out.